A season to remember for Inter fans, and to commemorate it, we're joined by our friend Alessandro Raffa from InterViews podcast that you host with our other friend John Marco. But Alex, how's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for having me on. I promise not to gloat too much here, but obviously gotta do some celebrating.
Of
Listen,
course.
I said congratulations off the pod, so I'm gonna say it on the pod as well, guys. From a Milanista to
Auguri.
my cousin basically, as an Interista. Alessa, congratulations. I'm gonna leave it at that. You guys deserved it, but I'm gonna leave it at that.
I appreciate it. It's not you don't see too much of the congratulations on the in the Twitter world, so it's good to hear a little appreciation for what was ultimately
Nobody wants to do it face
season.
to face. Nobody wants to do it face
Exactly.
to face. I'm doing it face to face, guys. Milanista, Interista, we're here tonight with the stupid Juventino, but hey, we're here.
I respect it.
For sure.
Joined by obviously Adriano, myself here on the Calcio Guys. Gianni's can't make it, but it's going to be a lot to talk about. We want to talk some Inter, but we also want to talk Azzurri later. We're all three of us are wearing our Azzurri shirts, so it works out.
Something.
Yeah, exactly. Something Italy. So it works out. Obviously, 30-man provisional list for the Euros was named. We'll talk about that later. Obviously, a couple of Inter players, but first of all, how does it feel to win the Scudetto as an Inter fan? First one in 3 years.
Yeah, I was talking about it with Johnny on a pod today. We actually recorded, and we were giving like our number grade for the season, and it was a pretty quick exit in the cups in both Champions League and Coppa Italia. But the thing about the Scudetto win that makes it, for me, I said 9 out of 10. The thing about the Scudetto win is that it wasn't just a Scudetto, right? There's a historical element to it of it being the 20th, right? And it's a little bit different because now you're sewing the second star on the shirt, and it had a obviously in the context of seasons that we've seen, dominant seasons that we've seen, to win it with 5 match days left in the season. It was just a tremendous year. A little bit towards the end of the year, you're like, you're looking at these performances, but you don't really have much to judge, right? Because they're not exactly motivated to win all those games. But it was a hell of a year. It's an amazing achievement, and also, I think a lot of people are really happy for Inzaghi because he's been, with Lazio and with Inter, he's been close before, and to finally get over the hump, he's one of, for Italy fans, for Azzurri fans, for Calcio lovers, he is the epitome of that Italian up and coming coach. Now he's known worldwide, so it's really nice that he was able to get the win. So we are very happy here in Interland.
I completely forgot that's his first Scudetto. It feels like he's been with the team longer. I forget, it was Conte who was coach last time, and you're right. He's won enough. We talked about it when we were recording our previous Team of the Season episode, where he's won a Super Coppa and Coppa Italia in his first 2 seasons with Inter. So he has all these hardware. He won Coppa Italia, won Super Coppa with Lazio. It's true. Forgot it was his first Scudetto.
That was a stigma around him. It's like he's a cup merchant and he falls short in the league every year. And 38 games is different than going through a knockout tournament. It takes a lot, and obviously part of that is also health, right? We didn't really have too much in terms of injuries, so fingers crossed for next season, and really happy that he was able to get his first on the board, hopefully first of many.
Yeah, I think we referenced it in our previous episode as well. But finally getting over the hump, I think was the big thing for Inzaghi, like you said. To be honest with you, I was never the biggest, fondest fan of his as a manager. But what I will say again, now that you're here, and I said it before, and again I'll say it now, like I said, that you're here, but he has improved year after year after year, which, I remember the days where one of his players would get a yellow card and he would substitute them like basically immediately. And he was too scared and he was too worried and he didn't want this and he didn't want that. Fans were always pissed at him because he wasn't that coach to like take you to the next level, it seemed like. We said it right there. He's had pretty much silverware in every season that he's been an Inter coach. This one was obviously the biggest cherry, which was the Scudetto, and he finally got that. Would you say it's fair, Alessa, that he's improved year in and year out? And what's the biggest thing that he has really upped his game in terms of being a manager at such a high level for such a big team in this league?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I think the first, tactically, he's definitely made some improvements. One of the criticisms that I think you can still lobby his way is sort of the inflexibility when it comes to the formation, right? It needs to be a 3-5-2. Even with, Arnautovic and Alexis earlier on in the season being really out of form, there was a lot of conversation about whether they should go with an attacking midfielder behind the striker and sort of get maybe Mkhitaryan, or even they were talking about Sensi and Klaassen involved there. But he does have some rigidity in terms of the formation. But as far as the tactics are concerned, even last year when we had suffered 12 losses in the league and things were looking not so great for him, he changed the tactics of the team in terms of not pressing so high up the pitch, right? They didn't have the personnel to do that, and starting to sit back a little bit, control possession, and hit teams on the break after they were getting attacked. So he's shown an ability to sort of change the way that he approaches these games. I think one of the other things that's really come to the fore is his man management has definitely improved. You see these players absolutely love him. They call him Demone. He does have that fire on the side of the pitch. So it's not with managers, it's not too different than with players. Like, over time, they mature and they add more to their game. Hakan was not this player early in his career, but over time you gain new experiences and you add more to your game. And I think Inzaghi, the same can be said for managers and coaches. And that's why you don't just throw them in the bin. Like, you let them learn and you let them gain some experience. So there's those two things. There's also his rotation. I think he really wanted to stick to less rotation and more sticking with his guys. We saw it in the European Cups. Like, he did rotate, but the focus was on the league. And for the league this season, he pretty much went with his same starting 11 for most of the season. So that continuity, obviously not having to deal with injuries, like it really helped us to see the Inzaghi team that he wanted to put out there, game in and game out. And I think he has levels to still reach. I don't think that this is the pinnacle of his career. I think he's going to have a long career and continue to adapt, continue to grow. That's my hope, selfishly, as an Interista. But hopefully, in Italy, they view him that way too, because he is such a promising manager.
Do you think he can do it? Do you think he can do it? Sorry, Nick,
no, go ahead.
But do you think he, was he going to stick with Inter for the long haul? Like, would he go abroad? Like, would he take on another project somewhere else? Like, where do you? I mean, obviously you want his future to be at Inter. I understand that, but is that a realistic thing, or is that where do you see that?
So the abroad thing is interesting because he's not so interested in English, right? You can see he doesn't he doesn't really have that. He speaks Italian, and he also seems to be super comfortable with the league. I don't think he'll make a move abroad. The contract extension looks to be in place for 2027. 2027 is also looks like when Oaktree will look to sell. At this point, it looks like they want to be in here for the next several years. It's also when Marotta's contract is up. It's when the rest of the management team, it seems like this 2027 date is when we may see a change into a new era for Inter. But I think, 2027, he'll be with the team. That's the hope. The management team and him, they work really well together. There seems to be a good working relationship. You're winning the league. You have a squad that can do well in Europe. This year it was tough. Atletico is probably the toughest draw you can get for a round of 16. But I think they want to stay together and build something. And there is something to be said for having a project that lasts many years, like Klopp at Liverpool and several other examples. I think a manager can get a lot out of having a project and sticking with it, as opposed to just chasing, I don't want to say the bag, but just chasing new experiences and stuff like that.
Moving away from coaching, obviously, Lautaro City having MVP. He obviously didn't get the best striker award. We were talking about it off air, but these are pretty much participation trophies at this point. We all know he's the best striker. But talk to us about his season, and safe to say he's also Inter's MVP. But if there is someone else you would give the MVP trophy to besides him, who would it be?
No, it's got to be Lautaro. It's obviously on a personal level, his best season from a goal scoring perspective. I think he's had a very, very interesting season where in the beginning of the year, he could not stop scoring. I think he really, really leaned into the new captain of Inter sort of title that he was given, and he was a real leader for the squad, getting important goals. But there also was a period in the season which there's a lot to say for why it could have happened, but he didn't score in between, I think, February and maybe May. That is something that has been emblematic of his career. He will have these droughts where for some reason he just can't put it in the back of the net. And he had his chances. It wasn't like he all of a sudden dropped off. He was getting in good positions, but the finishing had changed. Maybe it does coincide with the fact that that's when the reports about his extension really started to ramp up, that the club and him were talking. He was constantly saying, I want to be here. But obviously, as we see now with these reports, there's a gap in between the demands and what Inter is willing to pay. So who knows if that played into his mentality during that stretch. Who knows if the penalty miss against Atletico, because that's been also something that we've seen from him before, where just hard to it's one of the weaker areas of his game for a striker that is so complete. So he himself did a podcast, I think yesterday or today, where he talked about how that did affect him mentally, and he was so upset, on the plane ride home after missing that penalty. So he's had an immense season, but it's not all complete yet. It's not all complete. We've got to work on getting rid of those goal scoring droughts, and it's got to be more consistent for a player that was on pace to potentially beat Higuain's record of 36 goals in the league to end up with, I think it was 26 or 27. There's still a level for him to get to, but he is the MVP. He was the captain of the team, scored goals in bunches, and for sure a player that I feel lucky to have on the team.
I think he's a player that also has, since he's joined Inter, has been up and down, has improved as well. Obviously, he's matured, I think, is pretty much what it is. I mean, he came, I don't remember how old he was when he came, but from early 20s now to mid 20s, and he's grown as a player. He has some experience under his belt, not only in the league but even in Europe and stuff like that. Making a Champions League final, 2 Scudetti. Like we said, the Coppa Italia is a Supercoppa is to his name.
World Cup winner.
You're right. But so I think every striker goes through those droughts. I think but there's still a difference between those good strikers and great strikers. I think from looking on the outside in, I think he's still in the middle of that. In terms of good and great, I think he's probably in the middle of that. And it's not to say that he's terrible. I think he's better than good, but he's not next level yet. Like I still think there's things to grow, like what you said, and we'll see. But I think one other thing for Inter this season, every team has to be lucky with the injuries. Obviously, it's at the end of the day, it becomes a luck thing. It almost seems like if you get a bunch of injuries in bunches sporadically throughout the year, it's just one of those things where you have to adapt. Even though Inter didn't really have to go with many injuries, I know people are gonna say, "Oh yeah, but Cuadrado was out, and this player was out." But it's like, guys, like Lautaro was there. The main guys were there. Like they were all there. So, but one thing I want to say is that, and I don't know if it's a credit to Marotta or who it may be, but the depth for you guys this year was huge. Because I even think, and I hate to bring back the Juves of the past, but the Juve A and the Juve B back in the days of them winning Scudetti after Scudetti were able to compete against pretty much anybody. I think, would it be safe to say for you, Alessad, that Inter kind of was in that same thing in terms of their A squad and their B squad pretty much can compete with anybody on all fronts? Is that safe to say? And how much did that help you guys this season?
It was immense. Like you said, it wasn't there weren't injuries to the point where we had lost guys for an extended period of time outside of, you mentioned Cuadrado, he was out for months. We did see injuries like Thuram, he was out for several, important matches. Hakan, the same thing. But as far as the depth is concerned, the team itself had really, really good depth outside of one position group, that being the strikers, right? And this is something that you'll see from Interisti going into the season with Arnautovic and Alexis as your third and fourth options. That was minimal depth at that one very, very important position group. You'll see Inter this summer constantly be talking about forwards, whether it's Goodmanson, obviously they brought in Taremi. So that was a position that the depth was not super great, but it also coincided with the first, 20 goal plus assist season for Marcus Thuram in his career. Obviously Lautaro going off and having the best season of his career. So that sort of masked the lack of depth in the attack, but the rest of the team, Mkhitaryan played a lot of minutes. Fratesi off the bench he didn't play as much as people thought he did, but the numbers in terms of his productivity was huge. I mean, the guy was coming off the bench and scoring really, really important goals in huge games like Verona and Udinese that ultimately, those are the games that you need to win if you're going to bring in a title. Great record against the top teams, but those are the teams that when it comes down to the wire, that know how to play you tough, and it's a 1-1 game heading into extra time. There, a player like Fratesi who can pop up anywhere and put the ball in the back of the net was huge. The depth at the wing backs, right? Carlos Augusto was huge for us. Darmian coming in for Dumfries when Dumfries went down, and then in the defense, I mean, to be able to go from Pavard to a player like Bisek, playing in the Danish league, all of a sudden coming up here, 22 years old. In Serie A being, huge for us. They got it. They hit it right on a few of the transfers that they brought in, like Fratesi and Bisek. But as far as depth is concerned, if I'm looking ahead, that forward group, now with Taremi coming in, it looks better. But I think there's still some work to do if you're going to be competing on fronts like Serie A, Champions League, Coppa Italia, Supercoppa, Club World Cup, and so forth. There's a lot to play for, and you hope to bring in some of those trophies. So depth is important. Depth is very, very important.
Is there anyone you'd specifically target
for the forwards?
Yeah,
Goodmanson is a guy that I really, really want, and I like him because he's a different type of player to what we see. I think the closest thing you can say is Alexis, because he's the one that drops and picks up the ball, but he's not the same Alexis that we've seen in the past. And I think Goodmanson, he's a good distributor. He's a really good goal scorer, not being an out-and-out 9, but he's still very, very productive in terms of getting goals. So I think the play style, it's a different it adds a different element that bringing that off the bench is a way to switch things up against teams. I think he would fit in very, very well after a breakout season with Genoa.
Yeah, 14 goals. It's not something to snuff, So I think, I think it was 14. Yeah, 14 goals, 4 assists. I think it was
14 goals, 4 assists. Yeah,
18 contributions only in Serie A, right? So, that would be interesting to see. We'll see if they let him go. But I think another name, and we spoke in our previous episode, team of the season. We even said a bit off air. Inter had, at least we did. We had an Inter player in every position group, from keeper down to forward, right? And I think it's
fair.
It's only fair, right? Like, I mean, as much as we're all rival fans, last season, if you didn't have Kvaratskhelia and Osimhen in your team of the season, you didn't have, other players, Kim and
you're
and
biased,
such,
yeah.
you're yeah, exactly. You're not really calling a spade. So one thing I wanted to say is that, and I maybe want to get maybe your thoughts on him. But for me, Sommer obviously was huge. I mean, we saw him, play in the German league, play for Switzerland. He's been huge internationally. Saving back in the Euros,
Against France.
saving Mbappe on the penalty against France, knocking them out. I know people are going to say he kind of came out of nowhere, but like if you've been following international football or just culture as a whole, like he's been there. He's been a pretty solid option between the sticks. Him coming to Serie A this season, replacing Onana, fit right in like a glove. I said personally, 19 clean sheets to his name. New league, new team, new system, new everything. It didn't matter. I think he was just playing the position like he knows how. And when you have a good defense in front of you, it obviously helps. But I think he was a big addition for you guys. I just want to get your thoughts on.
Yeah.
Obviously going from Handanovic, which was such a long servant for you guys, to you guys were so excited for Onana. He did what he did for you guys. That's fine. And then quickly turning the page to a new keeper in Sommer. It's not often that, these top teams kind of like recycle keepers like so quickly for, in consecutive seasons. Yeah. Just want to get your thoughts on Sommer, his overall season and what's next for him.
The season was fantastic, and I think it really comes down to when Onana left last summer, there were a lot of nerves for Interisti, but really what was it that made Interisti fall in love with Onana? The shot stopping was brilliant, but it was the distribution, right? He was pinging balls up and down the pitch, and it was like, this guy he's involved in the play of the team. That is what I think Interisti weren't expecting to see from Sommer. You mentioned, seeing him on the international stage, seeing him with Bayern before he came to Inter. Always been a terrific shot stopper. Always have, had amazing reflexes. I don't think there was any concern there. It was more so with Inzaghi's team playing out the back. Is he going to be able to shoulder the load that we saw with Onana? And there was barely any downgrade. If it may have even been an upgrade. He was a little bit safer in terms of how he was distributing the ball. He could still ping a long ball. There was also one of the big things that stood out for me was just you can see it with Onana at Manchester United. There's a sense of chaos at the back. With Sommer, not everybody gets excited for a 35-year-old, 36-year-old keeper to come in, but that level of calm, it makes all the difference. It makes all the difference in the world, especially you're slotting in a new player in Pavard into the back. Despite all the international experience, he still, has to integrate into the system. And, it's his calmness at the back was a huge something that just, had stood out to me, his calmness and his distribution. And, I think people also talked about his height. He's shorter for a goalkeeper, but incredibly athletic. And there was no saves that he wasn't able or no balls that he wasn't able to get to. Incredibly athletic keeper. So we have him here for another year at least, and looking to sign, a young Brazilian keeper in Bento Krupski. We'll see if that ends up coming through. He's a Brazilian international. I think he's the number 2 or 3 on that team, but he's a young keeper. And it's one of those things where if you can have a seamless transition from Sommer, veteran keeper, then you can hand over the keys to the next guy for the next 10 years. That's how you should do it as far as, the goalkeeping position is concerned. So for me, overall, Sommer was not a huge surprise, but a key cog in this team that I don't think a lot of people saw coming.
The fact that he is 34, 35 years old, I don't know exactly.
He might even be 36. I'll look that up, but
do you think they have to target maybe a younger goalie? Maybe Gregorio, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. He's linked with Juve, but you never know with these things, right? There's so many. How many times has a player been linked with Juve and he goes to Inter, or a player linked with Inter and he goes to Juve?
Yeah. Bremer is a good example.
Yeah, exactly. Is there another goalkeeper, maybe young goalkeeper you'd like to see Inter target?
It's for me, it is Bento. I think they've lined up the right kid. Obviously, has not played in Serie A before, so I do think that
Where does he play? Where does he play? Club.
He plays for Atletico Paranense in Brazil. So he is, that's what I'm saying about sort of the transition where you can bring in a guy into a low pressure situation where he does get to sit and learn and watch and maybe play Coppa Italia or maybe play, Supercoppa games where you're not really throwing him in there and learn. That would be, what I'm looking to achieve with that position. But ultimately, I trust Marotta. He seems to have his finger on the pulse of how to manage different assets, even though the offense last year, once Lukaku decided to split on us, that was a tough end to the transfer market. But I have faith in Marotta, and I do think that bringing in a keeper this summer is a top priority for that management team.
Speaking of obviously management team and all that, obviously the big news after the Scudetto was this whole Oak Tree thing, right? Suni and Zhang out, Oak Tree in. Wasn't able to pay up. They came in, swooped in. It's pretty easily explained like that. But I just want maybe it's kind of to like maybe lay out more for us in terms of maybe what we haven't seen. I mean, obviously we've seen a lot, but we want you as an Interista that kind of follows a bit more the days in and outs of Inter. Kind of what is this a good thing for you in your eyes? Is this a thing that obviously changes a lot, or just I want your overall thoughts on this? Yeah. Is it positive, negative, all that stuff?
It's a really fair question. It's a difficult one to answer as a fan when you're watching it, because you haven't seen how these folks operate behind the scenes. But as far as the fan sentiment, I think there's a lot of excitement because with Zhang, we did a whole deep dive into the situation on InterViews pod, but I think with Zhang, there was always a nervousness because you understood that this is an owner who's no longer able to invest in the club after COVID, completely gutted the Chinese arm of their business. Investment was over. So it was really a question of, he loved the club and he showed it and he tried to be there. Although this year he was not in Italy for, a number of reasons where it's really unsure, why he wasn't able to be around. But when the investment stops, you start looking at Suning. Was it more of we were winning? Were they really a positive influence on the club? Or was it the fact that we had a really competent management team in place that was able to navigate the handcuffs that the owners had put on the management team? And ultimately, when you look at the success of the team, Suning is going to sit there ranked second or tied with second in terms of ownership trophies that have been brought into Inter. But you have to give a lot of credit to Marotta and to Simone and to the players and the staff. So as far as the transition is concerned, all the reports and everything we know coming out from Oak Tree is that they've now officially acquired an asset for them, right? So for them to start gutting the team completely and making all these changes to an asset that is growing in value, that is competitive on the field, that doesn't make sense. What makes more sense is not necessarily that they're going to start investing, but they're going to leave the management team in place. They're not touching that. They're not touching the coach. It's the same if it was with Suning. If a huge offer comes in for the players, you can probably expect that player is going to get sold, but the management team is still going to do their best to keep the squad competitive. I wouldn't, for Interisti out there that are unsure, I wouldn't expect additional investment. I would say you're still looking at a player trading model where, one in, one out kind of situation and hoping that the competence of the management team can keep this thing afloat. But Oak Tree's incentive, if you're saying, they only look at us as an asset, it's not necessarily a bad thing. They need to grow the value of the asset, which means the first thing on their priority is going to be getting that new stadium in place. Once that new stadium in place, they're selling. And I know there's a lot of bureaucracy when it comes to Italy, when it comes to these sort of things. And we've been talking about this for years, but that's going to be their main focus. They have a much better relationship with Redbird and Milan than Zhang and Suning had. So I think there's going to be a little bit more synergy there. They're going to be more on the same page. I overall look at this as a positive. I know, there's a lot of wariness when it comes to these American funds coming in and not really understanding the business of Italian football. I would be much more worried if they were dumping Marotta and the management team, but that doesn't look like it's the case. It looks like they're interested in continuing to grow the value of the club, and part of that is competitiveness on the pitch. So I'm less so worried right now. Let's see how this market unfolds. Let's see how the season unfolds.
No, but if they're smart, obviously, I heard that too. They're not going to touch Marotta, and I think, in Inter world, it's Marotta non si tocca, right? We don't touch Marotta. So because I think you nailed it, Alex, is in terms of we saw what he was able to do at Juve. Obviously, the mastermind behind a lot, and I think with Inter, he's if he doesn't deserve a lot of the credit, or all the credit, he deserves a lot of it. So he's just, what he's been able to do is just fantastic. Off the pitch, obviously, but
it's sometimes it feels like he works better with these restrictions. Like he, almost like the fact that he has to get a little creative.
He came from Juve. The loophole, creativity, a bit of
part of the process.
That, exactly. Yeah. So it's not too. He's looking one way to going the other. We don't know, right? So, but no, joking aside, guys, the proof is in the pudding, right? We can joke all we want, but the proof is there. So he has the trophies to back it up. So, and again, one thing with these American companies, I see it obviously on my side of Milan, with Redbird, and fans are complaining this and that. We had Elliot that's still involved, so it's a lot to digest, I think, and I think fans just need to kind of understand that it's a business, right? Like, these guys want to make money. Like, at the end of the day, it's we're such hardcore fans that we're passionate about the colors, the history, the players, the this, the that, what we see on the pitch, but all the behind the scenes, Oak Tree wants to make money. They want to increase that value of Inter even more than what it already is at. So I don't know. Again, the stadium thing, me and you, Alisa, we can go back and forth and bang our head against the wall, because we've been talking about a new stadium. I know on our end, I could just imagine on your end as well. So we add that together. It's basically the same. It's been an ongoing thing. I don't know if you're hopeful for that or if you're optimistic about that. I've kind of just, at this rate, kind of just managed my expectations about it and just kind of left it on the bit of the back burner, because I don't see an immediate future with that happening. Every year we see, in this area, Milan's they're gonna have their own stadium. Inter's gonna go here. They're gonna still share it at a new location. Yeah, you hear it all. So I don't know. San Siro, I've got the chance to go. Absolutely beautiful. Like, for me,
it's the cathedral of football. It really is.
Scala del Calcio, right?
Yeah.
So it's really historical. So I would hate to see that get demolished. But at the same time, if we want to look to the Juves of the world again, they have their own stadium. They're going in the right direction. So unfortunately, I don't know if it will happen in Milano anytime soon. We'll see. Rome, let's not even go there. It's a whole different story. But are you optimistic about it, or is it something that I'm just like, or am I talking out of my ass? Like,
no. I'm becoming more optimistic about it, because I think the mayor of Milan, Sala, is sort of at his last wits with this thing, where he has tried and presented all these different all these different proposals, because obviously, we talk about incentives, right? Incentives. Oak Tree wants to, increase the value, whatever. His incentive is that he keeps the team there, so that, the Milan, the city, continues to make money off of that stadium. It's a different incentive for the clubs who need that revenue on their own. And this is not, it's not just, we're talking about clubs being greedy or, wanting all this money. We're talking about the future of football when we discuss these stadiums. Italian football is in dire need of this kind of renovation, this kind of innovation and upgrade, exactly, in order to compete. And it's amazing, because our coaches are, again, for me, the best in the world. The teams we were the first, in this first new format we're heading into for European football next season, we gained an extra spot because of how well our teams have done in Europe. Now imagine, we're able to start not competing financially, but at least play play, in the same playground as some of these other teams and some of these other leagues. A stadium individually for Inter and a stadium individually for Milan is huge to get to that competitiveness level, which for you, Adriano, you, Nick, for myself, growing up, having seen the glory days of Serie A, there's nothing that I want more, right? We don't want our stars that have to continue to get poached every single year. We want to be what Serie A used to be. So it's very, very important. But ultimately, I'll bring it back to this. The bureaucracy, the red tape in Italy is something that remains undefeated. It remains undefeated. So let's see how hard they can push.
Every year.
Yeah, they really are. They really are. So let's see how hard they can push. I think it's pretty apparent to Milan that they're not going to stay at San Siro. They're not interested in renovating. So at some point, the dam has to break here. Somebody's got to blink, and hopefully it goes our club's way.